Hello, everyone. I am Sam the Man, and I am here with my co-host Kenny Powers. We are two extraordinarily passionate people who love movies and TV and bring really different perspectives to them from between the two of us, and that's what we're here to discuss: film, TV, old, current, anything in between. It's our first podcast episode, so I imagine there will be a lot of bumps in the road, but we're just here to do it because we love it and don't get to see each other often enough in person to discuss all the film and TV ideas floating around in our brains. So here we are. Kenny, go ahead and introduce yourself to the viewers, listeners.
Yeah, I'm Kenny, and like Sam was saying, we're just two guys, we're two white dudes hosting a podcast like every other white guy on the planet,
Very white.
and and we love movies. Like we watch them. We're just lay people watching movies like everyone else. We didn't go to film school. Sam got the closest. I went to engineering school. He went to English school. So good for you, Sam.
Thank
You
you.
have that critical thinking brain going for you.
That's
But
right.
yeah, we're just excited to be here. We're excited to hang out. We're excited to chat about movies. Have some hot takes. Probably have some not so hot takes. I imagine Sam will have all of the hot takes because, like he said, we disagree on movies all the time.
Which is
Yeah,
great.
I'm really pumped. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
We could just have a podcast where we just fully agree all the time,
Yeah.
and then no one would listen.
That'd be pretty lame.
I wouldn't listen.
Yeah, great. You wouldn't listen to our own podcast. Yeah, that's my trump card, actually. Anytime I get into an argument, I'm like, yeah, I was an English major, so we studied film in some of those classes. So that's the end all be all. I studied some film in college.
Well, the movies that we're talking about today, there's lots of science in there. It's all garbage. But there's science. So maybe I'm the expert when it comes to these films we'll be talking about today. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, and speaking of what we're going to be talking about today, there's so many good things to talk about. Second season of Severance is going on. I got people texting me
good.
every day about that. I haven't even watched it. I'm going to start.
Gotta watch it.
The Brutalist, I heard, is 4.5 hours long and makes you want to rip your
Oh.
eyeballs out. What else is
Love
new?
it.
Captain America, Black Savior, or whatever that movie is. Brave New.
Getting us canceled 5 minutes in.
Oh,
It's
sorry.
great.
Sorry. Whatever it's called. Anyways, we are going to take it really easy. This is going to be like a sample episode for us. So we're going to ease in by talking about just some film news, some shows or films that we quit on, and then we'll get into the real meat of things. Really simply, we're going to rank our favorite Spider-Man films, the live-action Spider-Man films, and then also shout out our favorite and least favorite villains from the films. Imagine we have no listeners on this episode, maybe ever, but if you do listen to this episode, feel free to subscribe, follow, like, all that good stuff, even if you don't enjoy it. That would be great. So,
Especially if you don't enjoy it.
especially if you don't enjoy it. So let's hop into our first segment, What's News. And, this is probably almost a week old now, but I figured it's worth talking about because I know you kind of like this actor, and he's probably the most famous actor on the planet right now, I would say. Timothy Chalamet. He won the SAG Award for Best Actor in A Complete Unknown. It's his first major award win. He had a speech that went viral afterwards. I have a snippet of it. Here's what he said. I know we're in a subjective business, but the truth is I'm really in pursuit of greatness. I know people don't usually talk like that, but I want to be one of the greats. I'm inspired by the greats. I'm inspired by the greats here tonight. I'm as inspired by Daniel Day-Lewis, Marlon Brando, and Viola Davis as I am by Michael Jordan and Michael Phelps, and I want to be up there. He wrapped up by framing the award as motivation, saying, this doesn't dignify that, but it's a little more fuel, a little more ammo to keep going. Thank you so much. That speech went viral. Most speeches at awards nowadays are all social, political commentary and just people kissing one another's butts in Hollywood. And so kind of an interesting speech that I think a lot of people liked and resonated with. What were your thoughts on this speech and maybe Timothy Chalamet in general, your perspective on him as an actor?
Yeah, whenever you see him on screen, whether that's like him hosting Saturday Night Live, or whether it's him in Dune or whatever, he's such a charmer, right? You see him, you're like, oh man, look at that cute face, look at that cute little like fairy boy's face,
Look at that
and
medieval shrew.
yeah, exactly. He just has that like knave vibe about him, where it's like this guy would totally be a court jester. He's so fun,
Yes.
and I love what he said. It's just like, hey, it's okay to have a competitive spirit about it. I feel like when it comes to artists, so often they don't feel this like they don't want to like show that they're being really competitive when they really are. Like you can go back through history, you can look at art history, and just like all these people who have feuds against each other because they just want to be the best. And I love how like Timmy's just putting it out there. He's saying, hey, we're all here trying to be the best, and the reality is it's award season, and we are all competing against each other. It's like it's all in the name of sportsmanship, all that sort of stuff. It's great. I think that I'm glad that the air is cleared and started being like, oh my gosh, like I'm like so surprised that I won this. It's like, no, dude, you worked really, really hard. You learned how to play the guitar just for this movie. Classic
I heard
awards
it took him
based
like
on.
5 years. Like he was
Yeah,
working on this role for 5 years.
yeah. It's
Wow.
like, dude, yeah, be proud about what you did. I think it's great. What do you think about it, sir?
Yeah, I love it. I'm a huge Daniel Day-Lewis fan. My favorite film of all time is Gangs of New York. So when I heard that, I was like, all right, let's go. I also love that he seems like a old soul as far as a sports fan goes.
Yeah,
Like his goats tend to be like my goats in sports, like Michael Jordan and Michael Phelps. It's like he's skipping his current generation and giving props to the generation before them, which
yeah,
I'm like, it just seems like a really like mature thing to do, where like
hmm
everyone his age right now is like, they look up to the people immediately in front of them often. So I'm like, and he's obviously like a big sports fan. I actually
yeah.
like, that's where I gained like a weird amount of respect for him, and I don't even watch college football, but you remember when
Watching
he,
College Game
yeah, when
Day.
he went on College Game Day and he's on there with like four panel experts, and it's this big game, and he's the only one that picks his team, and everyone else picks against them, and they're all kind of like laughing at his pick, and the team he picks just blows out the other team, even though they were the
Yeah,
underdog, and it was just like, wow, this kid is actually like super relatable and like really cool. I really like what you said though about how he's like, yeah, we're competing for an award as opposed to just like, oh, I'm so lucky like that I got this award.
yeah, yeah. You always see it at these awards shows where like, and they're trying to be like, you know, up about it, but like everyone's always like so happy and clappy for everyone else, and you never like skip like no one is allowed to like be disappointed if they
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
win.
exactly.
It's totally different than the sports world where like someone will lose one single football game, there'll just be like tears being shed at any
Yes.
single level. Here it's like, oh my gosh, no, they totally like deserved it. It's like, man, why don't like no, you guys are competing. That's the whole point is there is a winner of this. There is no second place in award season. So I thought it was great. Yeah, huge New York sports fan. I didn't know that either until College Game Day. It's like, whoa, this dude knows ball. Like Timmy knows ball. He's the Lisan Al Gaib of College Game Day. He
Yeah.
did it.
That is just that's so dope. Yeah, I'm looking at his film resume here, and I've seen, one, two, three, four of his films, and he's had like 10 major films, you could say. And like, you know, I think he's been great in all of them. I coach girls soccer. They're all like in love with him right now. So it's really funny to like hear them talk about him. But
Same.
as like
Same.
just an actor, like I'm like I feel like he really does a good job. As much as sometimes I want to hate him because he's so popular and young and good looking and versatile and successful. Um, I think he's awesome, and I really loved him in the French Dispatch because I'm a big Wes Anderson fan. But obviously, he was great
Yeah.
in the Dune movies. But all right, cool. Well, we will move on from that. Go into our little mini segment here, transition segment called "I Quit," where we will go over a show or movie that we quit at some point. At what point did we quit it, and why did we quit it? So, Kenny, do you want to start with what you quit?
Yeah, I quit House of the Dragon. I got like 4 episodes in. I got to this. I got to like the scene where Rhaenyra and what's the uncle's name?
Damon.
Yeah, it just
Very,
about to
very
hook up, and I'm
subtle.
like, yeah, it's very very subtle. Yeah, and like right before they hook up, and I was like, I can't do this again. Like I watched all Game of Thrones in a very very short amount of time, and you just see all these characters going through these like rich redemption arcs, and like some of them don't go on that arc, and that's fine. And then you're building up and you're building up. And for me, it was like the span of 2 years, but in the reality, over like more than a decade of time, people start like grasping to these characters, and they're saying like, oh, like a piece of garbage like Jamie can actually like grow and he can become a more complex character, and you start to like you see him at face value, and then they kind of like tear away at the layers, and like it's beautiful. And then in the last few episodes, like it's the same thing that everyone says about Game of Thrones, where the last few episodes it all gets reverted back, and it's like
So you just have a
everyone's like, oh
fear
my,
of that
yeah.
happening.
Well, yeah, I couldn't, didn't want to get hurt again. And then at the end of the day, it's just like the story of like, oh, like morality is gray and all these sort of things. Like, hey, listen, like there are complex situations, and like we learned with Jamie, right? It's just not everything is at face value. He has his flaws, but he grows. But to do all that again just for them to be like, oh my gosh, like moral greatness is so awesome, when reality is like you guys are using moral greatness just to like justify these people being bad. And so
And by
often
and by
I
bad, you're
honestly,
referring to the incest, correct?
yes,
Okay.
yes. General rule, we shouldn't do that. I think that's.
Even in a fantasy universe. So you're basically like, oh, I think in the first, like, I see what you're saying. In the first Game of Thrones, it's like very shocking in the first episode where you see Jaime Lannister and Cersei Lannister getting it on, and you're like,
Yeah,
whoa, like this is
yeah,
weird, and like, it's clearly taboo. So it's almost like, okay, you're starting the series over, and obviously that's uncomfortable. Even though we know they're fictional characters, it still makes you very
yeah.
uncomfortable. Um,
And like I get it, the Targaryens like that's what they do, right? It's like that's their whole thing. That's how they're like, keeping their like weird eugenic bloodline pure. I get it. But it's just I don't want to watch like seasons upon seasons of people getting more and more corrupted. And I don't want to watch seasons where at the end of the day, like, people are like, oh my gosh, look at this good decision this person made. It's like this person made a good decision like almost out of pure luck.
mhm.
Like it was just happenstance that they happened to make a decision that was like noble and worthwhile, or it was because it benefited them. It's like that's where you're like, oh, moral greatness. It's like, no, this is just a bunch of people being bad, and then if it benefits them, they'll make a good decision. So I just I just couldn't do it again.
I think I'm starting to think that you have a phobia to incest, which
Yeah,
who's the weird
huge.
one here,
Yeah, huge,
Yeah.
huge incest bigot over
Yeah,
here
huge incest
for
figure. I
sure.
think you're in the minority on that one. I
Yeah.
will say, I think what stopped you from watching was not only the incest, but I think the incest. I feel like what House of the Dragon has done compared to Game of Thrones is, like you said, they're trying to push the gray area so far. Where like in Game of Thrones, it was like, okay, it's two grown adults having an incestual relationship with each other, while in House of the Dragon, it's like this young teen girl with like her old uncle, and it starts reaching
Yeah.
a point of like, wow, this is like too many layers of effed up that I don't want to be
Yeah.
involved in. So
You
that's
just you,
where I think your brain broke, and I don't blame
yeah,
you.
I just entered big yikes territory super fast, and it's a shame, right? Because then I see all the things on social media. I'm like, oh man, this show looks so sweet. I freaking love dragons. Like I will consume any dragon based media basically, but I can't go back. I can't go back and get hurt again.
I think it's
What
one of
what would
those.
have?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think it's one of those things. Sometimes I think about this where I'm like, if Lauren, my wife, were to walk in while I'm, um, if Lauren were to walk in while I was watching a scene of something, and she was like, "What's going on in this scene?" and I had to explain to her what was happening, and it was too awkward to explain. I'm like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be watching this right now. So, okay, I totally get that. My I Quit is Netflix came out. It's been trending all week with American Murder, Gabby Petito. You remember Gabby Petito? Okay, so it was like during the oh, my video is gonna look glitched out here. That's all right. It was during the COVID era, I believe. It was like 2020 or something, and this couple went on a road trip basically, and she went missing, and over time, and I guess like the boyfriend was acting really weird, and basically it came down to like everybody thought this guy did it, and apparently he like killed himself, and they like found his remains, quote unquote, but actually it seems like I was talking to somebody the other day, and that he didn't kill himself, and that there's like this big conspiracy that like he's still out there right now, and he's alive somewhere, and that like he killed his girlfriend basically. What's interesting, and I love these murder mystery things. Like my favorite one ever is on Netflix, and it's called Don't F with Cats, Catching an Internet Killer. It's like the most riveting 3-episode documentary like I've ever seen. Like I just grew up, my mom would like open my eyes and forced me to watch all these true crime stories, and they were like, a lot of them are horrifying, and they do the awful reenactments. So like I'm just so used to it. My mom would be like, oh, isn't this great? This was such an interesting story where all these kids murdered this kid they didn't like. And I'd be like, Mom, holy smokes. Like, that's pretty dark. I will say, though, I turned this off after 6 minutes, not because of the lack of quality, but because of the the intensity of the realism. It was 6 minutes in, and they're showing like a video, which is so interesting, right? Growing up, everything's a reenactment, a crappy reenactment on like A&E or something, some awful cable television. And it's like, this is a professionally produced thing. And since everyone has phones and cameras nowadays, like there's all this real footage from this. And it like kind of hits home. Like, and it starts with like this scene where like the girl who we know ends up dying and being murdered is like being talked to by police because, and like it has the police cam that's recording, and she's crying, and someone called the police because they said they saw her boyfriend, I guess, on the side of the road, like slapping her and like physically assaulting her. And so like she's there with the police. They're asking her if everything's okay, and she's like, yeah, it's just been really tough. So you like know in that moment, you're like, oh my gosh, this girl's life could be saved potentially right now if she just like opens up, or is just like, yeah, things are not good right now, but for whatever reason, you know, I'm sure they get into it. She keeps her mouth shut, and they just like move on until she ends up dying. It's like, it's so hard to see this girl who's like young 20s, who seems so like innocent and beautiful and had her whole life ahead of her. And knowing like she dies. And it was just, honestly, I was just like, I can't take it right now. Like maybe it's because I have a 6-month-old at home, but it was just like too much. And I had to be like, I just had to turn it off. And I'm normally into that stuff, but like just too dark. Like with the actual footage to an extent in the 21st century.
Yeah, you always get, like, when it comes to true crime, there's always that like moral quandary of, okay, are we using this for entertainment or is it for education, sort of thing?
Right.
And it's like those sorts of lines can get really tough when you start seeing live footage of stuff where it's like, oh man, like this is it's like a weird, it's like, you know, you start worrying about like, oh, should people be allowed to profit from something like this? And it's heavy.
Yeah. So 6 minutes, I quit. 6 minutes in, good for me.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you. Okay, so that's our I quit segment. We are just gonna self-reflect for 1 minute. How are we doing so far? How is it going? Do you think we're doing a great job? Is this the greatest podcast in the world? Is it okay? What do you think, Kenny?
I think that's going well. I think that it's I'm getting over like the idea of okay, I'm being recorded. It's not a big deal. You and I are just gonna have a conversation. I'm trying to like do the right podcast thing where I'm not interrupting you, and so I still find myself running into that a little bit. Um, I
That's
think it's
nice.
going good.
That's really nice of you because I'm a big interrupter. So
Yeah,
what we cannot both be interrupting each other. So I'll just
right.
interrupt and you be the kind, submissive one.
I don't know if I like that wording, but how do you think we're doing?
You know what? B plus. The video's a little wonky. Who knows how the audio is? But just from a friend to friend standpoint, it's honestly fun getting to talk to you about this stuff, and doing it weekly is, I feel like, going to be awesome. So
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just
Do you
enjoying
feel
it.
like we're do you feel like we're bringing good energy? Is there enough like energy being exuded?
I only have high energy, so this is it. There's no like off button for me unless like I go like really emo like Spider-Man 3 mode. But this is pretty much it for me. I think the energy's good. Um,
Okay.
okay, let's jump into the main meat of what we want to talk about today, and that is us just ranking the Spider-Man live-action films. So not the Miles Morales animated films; those will not be included in this. And we're gonna go from worst to best, and one by one we'll alternate and kind of have a discussion on these films. Do we disagree, agree, and what do we like about them? What do we not like about them? And yeah, it's going to be a good time. So do you want to start, Kenny? Give me your worst Spider-Man film. This is a big deal. If somebody were to ask you,
Yes.
what is the worst Spider-Man film? You have to stand by this.
Yes. It was a very easy choice. It was a very easy choice. It's Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3. You know, so third in the saga comes out in 2007, written by Sam Raimi and his brother and Alvin Sargent, who had worked on the previous movie, Spider-Man 2, which we'll get to probably pretty high up this list, I'd imagine. And it's just it's so funny because I was just doing this research about this movie, and I'm like, these are the movies that I had to like go back and rewatch several times because I was like, I haven't seen the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies in so long. So I was like, okay, I gotta go like refresh my memory. And I remember thinking even as a kid that like Spider-Man 3 just didn't hit me right.
Yeah.
And so I was like going through and doing all this research, and Spider-Man 3, in terms of its box office, actually grossed the most money out of any of the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies.
What is wrong with this world?
Yeah, it's crazy. And so, I mean, there's definitely things that I liked about it, like I think that Aunt May is so dang good actually in all of these movies. Like
Mm-hmm.
every interaction between Aunt May and Peter is like really impactful, and like a lot of it's pretty sorrowful too, right? Because they're processing like the death of Uncle Ben, and it's really heavy, but she is so good and so impactful, and just like hearing like throughout the series you're getting like different snippets of like their love story of Uncle Ben and Aunt May's love story, and you hear about how like they swam out to this island and Uncle Ben proposed to her out there, and she just there's no flashbacks, you're just like hearing this elderly woman like having lost her husband like describe the story. Super
So this
impactful.
is the highest point of
um
Spider-Man 3, basically, is Aunt May.
It's up there.
That's
The only
wild.
thing that I will say
That's
that I
wild.
really did like about Spider-Man 3 is like the theme of forgiveness is throughout the entire series. And I really do think it's like it was the right way and it was the right intent in order to end the series, right? Because like Peter becomes Spider-Man in this because he couldn't forgive himself over what happened to Uncle Ben.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because he went to this cage match, he didn't get paid, he wanted to get back at the cage match guy, and so he lets the robber get away, and the robber ends up. Well, we find out in this movie that a different guy accidentally kills Uncle Ben. Spoiler for a movie that's like a
Spoiler
decade plus old.
that you probably shouldn't ever
Um,
watch anyways.
yeah, Yeah, for the record, we're just not going to be issuing spoiler warnings on this pod, period. Like, we'll tell you what the podcast is about at the very beginning. If you haven't watched it and if you care to, go watch it first, then come back.
There you go.
Like, we could put on a huge blaring horn and say spoiler warning, but guess what? If you watched a movie podcast before, you know it's coming your way.
Yeah.
But forgiveness is the right way to end it because he moves into his like superhero journey out of this guilt because he chose to take revenge. So you have like revenge and like the subsequent guilt that came along with that. And at the very end of Spider-Man 3, right, Clay Marco, or whatever the guy's name is, the Sandman,
Mm-hmm.
is talking about how he accidentally kills Uncle Ben, and Tobey Maguire like forgives Marco, and he like drifts away into this like
I'm sorry. Is
weird
this is Spider-Man 3 your favorite movie or your least favorite movie? Because you're really talking the themes up here. You're really talking it up. I'm starting to think you actually have a soft spot for Spider-Man 3.
I had to squeeze this movie a lot in order to get something, but like I thought it was good. I thought it was good that that's how the story ended. Is like it kind of does bring Spider-Man together, and I feel like I was able to see Sam Raimi's vision in that,
Mm-hmm.
even though the rest of the movie is just like a total crapshoot.
Yes.
Like several things that made me laugh a lot was the new Green Goblin's like sick snowboard glider.
Yes.
It's just like
James
it's the
Franco.
era where everyone's playing like whatever, like 1080, and it's like, oh, dude, are you riding a Never Summer right now through the sky? That is so sick. Like, I just get a laugh out of that every time. There's like a scene where like Peter's about to propose to Aunt May, and there's this French waiter that can't help but calling Peter Parker Pecker, and I could not stop laughing. And then he's like, "Oui, oui, I am French." It's just like some like random French restaurant in New York, and I'm like, "What is happening? Why is this like part of the movie?" So I laughed that a lot. There's like the very memeable and gifable moment of Peter just saying, "How'd that get in there?" And it's just like, what?
This is definitely the like so many memes have spawned from Spider-Man 3, which is like
Yes.
sort of funny because I agree it's last on my list. I almost got really cheeky and made it second worst, but I was like, no, it's so bad. I was like, it has to be the worst movie. And
But
yeah, you have the dancing scene obviously with the finger guns. You have
yes.
the popular meme where it's Tobey Maguire and Harry in like the restaurant, and Harry says something that's supposed to be like offensive, and Peter's sitting there like, I already told you I'm doing this. Like, why are you trying to convince me otherwise? Like, it's just so funny how many memes came from this movie. And that's almost the legacy of the film is like before the era of memes.
Kind of the legacy of Tobey Maguire too, right?
That's...
Like when you think of Tobey Maguire, and maybe that's just because like we're so terminally online and I'm just inundated with memes all day. But like when I think of Tobey Maguire, I think of his little dance that he does.
It was weird because Tobey Maguire kind of went from like, Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, Seabiscuit, which was like a good movie people liked. Like people liked that movie. It was good. But like kind of like doing like somewhat of a serious actor. And then like obviously Spider-Man 3 happened. And then did you ever see Molly's Game?
Yes.
Okay, so like the bad guy in Molly's Game, like the jerk who's like fixing all the games and he like demoralized people, like that's based off Tobey Maguire. And like I always thought that was like really interesting. I was like, whoa, like this is the path this guy decided to take, was like cheating people over in like house poker games and like talking down to them. I was like, weird, very weird.
Yeah, you dig into these movies and you hear some behind the scenes stuff, and like all the cast and crew just like hate Tobey Maguire.
Yeah.
It's just it's crazy. So, okay, I got a question for you, Sam.
Yes.
The bad boy montage, right? The iconic, like literally the seminal moment of this film.
Yep.
Is that montage self-aware?
Oh.
Like, do they know it's funny when they're making it?
I'm going to say no. And I think it'd be great if it was a yes, but I have to say no based on the tone of the first two films. It
Yeah,
seems too weird. And the third feels disjointed from the first two in so many ways.
it's so true.
Yeah, but also like it would be one thing if it were a different director and writer and everything, but like
Yeah.
so strange that it's the same one to and what's weird is like there's this really strange edgy darkness to Spider-Man 3 while it also being like comically bad. So
Yes. Yeah.
I don't think they're self-aware. It's a great question.
Yeah.
I that's really tough. I think Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
I think that's tough.
I noodle on it. I've been noodling on it because it's like part of it is like so comical that I think where I'm landing is they were so afraid of like turning Spider-Man bad that they felt like they had to lighten it up a little bit.
Hmm.
Like even the music as he's doing his thing, he
Right.
has this like hilarious
The
haircut that
hair,
maybe at
yeah.
that time had kind of like started to go out of style. He's like wearing a little bit of
They couldn't
eyeliner.
even get
He
that
comes out,
right.
he's yeah, he like comes out and he's like wearing all black. And even the part where he's like the most cool is when he's like in the jazz club and he's like doing his piano riffs is like, oh, okay, this guy can do a piano riff. That's cool. And then he gets up and he just like starts doing a dance. It's like, whoa, you work and like everyone is like totally cheering him on in this club and it's like, what is happening? It's just it's bizarre. That's when it starts to turn for me to like what I hate about this movie.
I think
Like,
uh and it is the worst film. We can't spend forever on this film, but to
yeah,
cap off this film from my end, I'll say um like you talked about forgiveness and how it pulls everything together. I like that. I feel like the finale of this film goes on for so long. I
so
can't even
long.
like it's almost like they shoot the same scene over and over and over again for like 30 to 45 minutes at the end. For the big battle, with Venom
Right.
and Sandman and Green Goblin, and it just drags on. And I was just definitely like checking my watch during that scene, and I was like, I'm not entertained. I'm not very thrilled at all. So, um,
Yeah.
and the graphics like in weird ways like got worse in some
Agreed.
scenes in Spider-Man 3, and
Yeah.
I'm very confused like watching it just being like what happened here? Like, okay, the movie's just a
Yeah.
complete mess. We can agree it's the worst film.
Agreed.
Would not recommend unless you want some laughs and you want
It's a
some.
good bad movie Tuesday
Yeah,
maybe.
yes, absolutely. It's super campy. Um,
Yeah.
okay, what is your second least favorite Spider-Man film? So the seventh film
Yeah.
of the eighth of the eight.
It is 2014's Amazing Spider-Man 2,
Wow.
directed by Mark Webb. Somehow still grossed $700 million
How
at the
how
box
you
office.
gonna put that movie at 7 when it's directed by a guy with the last name Webb?
Dude,
That's
it's
honestly just
it's
disrespectful.
listen. So I hold a very like a really cherished like part of my heart to the actor Dane DeHaan specifically in his role in the movie Valerian City of a Thousand Planets.
Okay.
So I am a big Dane DeHaan guy, but in this movie he's just like has the like Goblin is he's like so greasy and
He is
like he
greasy. I'll give you
oozes
that. I'll give
like
you that.
his like vibe is oozy. He looks oozy the whole time. He's like this grosses me out. It felt like something that honestly would have fit better coming from a horror director like
Well, I was
Sam
gonna say
Raimi.
I kind of liked how creepy he was in the movie. Actually, like I
I just
know,
don't
weird. Call me greasy. Call me a grease lover. But like, um,
big greasy guy.
I thought he, I guess, fit the mood and the tone of this style of those two films well because they feel darker. These
Yeah.
films do. But sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead on your rant about how you don't like this guy and how he tries to look like Leonardo DiCaprio and it doesn't work out.
Yeah. I just think that there's like, and you get it in the first round of Spider-Man movies where there's this like duplicity of the Goblin where there's like Norman Osborn in particular with the Green Goblin and like that great interaction that we see in those movies. And here it's just like he's bad. Like you can like look at him from the start and he's like, this dude, there's something off. There's something off about this guy. And I don't like that. I like that duplicity because it's the same
Mm,
like we're living this is, you know, not pre-Marvel universe, but like in this universe people are all still trying to like keep their identity secret. And
right.
it's like if I saw that guy walking down the street, I'd be like, that dude is a super villain.
Yeah,
Like,
you are right about that. Like there is a moment, I can't remember if it's in this film or the first of these films, when he's friends with Peter Parker and they're skipping stones, and there is like a moment that they're having where it's like, okay, it's cool seeing these two as friends.
mhm.
But I do agree, he definitely gives off like really evil vibes. Where like James Franco's Harry,
Yeah.
like didn't really give that off. Like he was like
No.
such a genuine friend who came from this place of privilege. So you know,
Yeah.
at least it was interesting to see like a different take on Harry. I guess they didn't just completely rehash him
Yeah.
as well.
Agreed.
Um,
And the suit's different and that's good.
yeah, he does look ridiculous. Like when his hair starts going crazy, like he does look pretty ridiculous in that film. When he's in
Yeah.
full Green Goblin mode, he looks like honestly absurd.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna shock you here with my ranking of this movie. Are you
Oh.
ready?
Mm, blow me away.
Okay. Um, I have the Amazing Spider-Man 2 as my third favorite Spider-Man film. I know. I know. What
No.
an absolute disconnect. But that's why we're here, to have this big
What
disconnect.
what okay, what did you like about it? What did you like about this movie?
There's one thing. There's one Okay, two things. Two things.
Okay, I maybe I know where you're
The
going.
first, and I have to say this because, well, okay, I'm gonna go with three things. I'm gonna go with three things. Um, the first is the opening scene. I have a friend who's obsessed with Spider-Man, and he says this is like the most like underrated scene of all the Spider-Man films. The opening scene when he's web swinging from a first-person perspective through the city is incredible.
Mhm.
It really
It's
is.
so good.
Um, and so that scene itself is incredibly iconic, and I love it. Um, the second thing I will highlight is, obviously we get this in the first Amazing Spider-Man film, but you're getting Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone. Like,
Yeah.
as they're on their incline in their careers, you're getting two like really, really solid like acting leads here. And I think they
And
do,
their chemistry is dynamite.
yeah, yeah. So they do a great job. And to go off that, this is the thing that does it for me. This is why it's up here, is going to be this big thing besides those other two. That final scene towards the end of the movie, the big battle with Electro, you got Jamie Foxx going everywhere. Like, that scene's actually, like, even though, like, you know, Jamie Foxx's character is kind of thin, obviously, and he kind of plays like a weird nerd who gets mad and wants to kill everybody. His motives are really unclear. But that scene's kind of cool, like on the edge of the city when they're going through all the electric stuff. Like, that's actually pretty, I enjoyed that scene.
Yeah.
But it's when Gwen Stacy, not an MJ, so really cool to see like Gwen Stacy,
Hmm.
falls and he goes to save her, and it is like slow motion, and then it's like and she dies, is like, in my opinion, like one of the most impactful scenes in all of these Spider-Man 8 films, because it
Yeah.
completely subverts your expectations. In every Spider-Man film, this was the only moment where my jaw absolutely dropped. Where I was just like I can't believe they actually did this scene and they actually killed off this character. I was like, it was unbelievable to me. And it was like honestly sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why it's up there for me. It has like one of the
Yeah.
most impactful scenes for me. It's got a few great characters, and I love like the vibe actually of those movies. It's like, it's super weird that like Sony has these movies and they're just like, oh, we're gonna make 2 Spider-Man movies, and it feels like there should be more like after that one, and it just like doesn't really happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah. Okay, what is your number seven? What is your second?
Okay, mine is Spider-Man Far From Home, which is
Mm,
the sequel in the Tom Holland series, like the new Marvel series.
the second one.
Yeah, the second one, I think it is so bad. I think everything is so off key in that movie. I I'm not a big Zendaya fan in general, and of the three films that she's in,
The bad take.
yeah, I know. I'm a hater. Whatever, I don't care.
Yeah.
Um, of the three films, I can't stand her. I can't really stand her in most of them, but the third one she's okay in actually. The second one, I really can't stand her. Not just her, all the side characters, all the jokes are awful. Like they are just absolutely terrible. If you go back and watch that film, like nothing lands. It feels like, and it's just like a lot of awkward, like really lowbrow Marvel humor where there's like highbrow Marvel humor, which is kind of like they put all their energy into like the Avengers film, and you can feel this banter and this back and forth, and it's like
Hmm.
high quality like banter and charm. You can tell this one was written, and it just like almost none of the jokes land for me, and there's a lot of like awkward pauses after a lot of them, and I just don't like it. I also there's like a scene in the middle, a big fight scene, and if you like pay attention, like the graphics are awful. Like the background actors are awful. It's just like everything about it just like rubbed me the wrong way. It felt to me like a movie that was rushed out for one reason or another, and just none of it hit for me. Jake Gyllenhaal as like the mystery villain. I thought the final scene was cool when they're fighting and it's kind of like virtual reality. I thought that was kind of cool. I thought the ending was kind of weird. Where it's like, oh, Spider-Man killed me or whatever, and like everyone thinks he's a bad guy. I guess that was the best part of the movie, probably the last 15 minutes. But everything before then, I just couldn't care less for it. And I honestly kind of, even though Jake Gyllenhaal like did a fine job, for me, it's like it's so sad honestly. Marvel just like slays great actors where they're like all these great actors like Robert Downey Jr. and Scarlett Johansson and just all of them. It's like eventually Marvel will come knocking on your door and they will say, here's a paycheck for $20 million, and you will have to say yes because that is a lot of money and you will do a good job in your role because you're a great actor. But I'm also like
Yeah.
looking at Jake Gyllenhaal and he did a good job, but I'm like, you're such an incredible actor, like one of my favorite actors, that to see you playing a villain that's around for half a film in the middle of a Spider-Man series is like a weird thing, like to go back on and be like, oh, look, think of all the great Jake Gyllenhaal films. Oh, yeah, Spider-Man, Far From Home. I'm good. So there's my two
Uh,
cents. Yeah.
I have Spider-Man Far From Home as my number three most favorite Spider-Man
Oh,
movie.
that's so great. We
I
flipped. We flipped.
I love all of the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies actually quite deeply.
Oh,
I
wow.
think that Tom Holland, I don't think that this is a hot take at all. I think Tom Holland is like the best of the three Spider-Mans. Like he like encapsulates Spider-Man very, very well. Like
Mm-hmm.
he has that young energy. He quips super well. You can like he has this charm, but you can also believe that he was like like the nerd in the early 2000s that would get picked on sort of thing. I really love him. I really love him and Zendaya's chemistry together. I think is great. This movie I love just how there's just consequences. I think we're talking about a lot of consequences. He's dealing with in this movie like not having RDJ anymore. He doesn't have Iron Man. He has lost his guidance. He's trying to figure out who he is, which I think is great. Like I love how it's so hard for me to like separate out these movies because I do kind of like feel like I group them together so often. But
Mm-hmm.
in this movie, he has this like every single one of these specific storylines is a coming of age story, and here he's coming to terms with the fact of like, hey, you have all these amazing powers, and he's like understanding and dealing with the fact it's like, yeah, with great power does come great responsibility, but there's a weight to that and there's consequences to that. Like the very end of this movie, right, where
Mm-hmm.
his identity is released,
Mhm.
right? And it's like all the clips were cut together by Mysterio to be like basically to reframe their entire fight to show that like Spider-Man is like destroying Mysterio, that he's malevolent, and he has to go into hiding. And that like that moment for me is so impactful because it's like Peter Parker's secret is out. And Peter Parker's secret through all of these movies, through all eight, and including the animated movies, they're all about him trying to keep himself a secret so he can keep his life separate. Like he's trying to sever. He's trying to have his like life as a superhero and his life is just like a normal kid and he wants to be a normal kid. And I just find that like really, really impactful. And
Yeah.
it's just I always love a good jaunt, you know. And this is a great jaunt. You have like so many scenes around you. I was like, oh, that's great, that's great. I actually think that I agree that this isn't like a spectacular Jake Gyllenhaal role necessarily, because yeah, he's been in a lot of really, really great things. Um, but I do love, you know, because like I love that it's about his editing and then like his like mystery, his mystique is all around. It's very Wizard of Oz, like the wizard
Yeah.
himself, where it's just you know, it's smoke and mirrors and all of it is for a more malicious plan that I think actually harkens a little bit back to oh, which Avengers movie is it with Baron Zemo? Is that I can't remember now. This is embarrassing.
I'm not sure, but
Um,
but we do have to keep moving along because we're stretching it out a little
yes,
bit here. But I will say I agree with you, and I think that's why the highlight of that film for me is the last 15 to 20 minutes. I think that's when all the fun stuff happens, when all the action, like the good action and the consequences happen. So I do find
yeah,
it funny that our 3 and 7 are flipped, and I think that's awesome.
yeah,
For me, my last 2 cents on that movie is I'll say it's probably the most forgettable Spider-Man film for me, for better or for worse.
mm,
But okay,
interesting.
let's
Yeah,
move on, and we kind of have to go a little faster with some of these, even though we could talk
okay,
Spider-Man forever, just because we're dragging out some of the worst ones. So let's kind of get through some of the middle ones, and then we can talk about the
yeah,
cream
yeah.
of the crop, hopefully.
All right, yeah. For
Awesome.
me, number six is The Amazing Spider-Man. A lot of this boils down to I think that Andrew Garfield is so charming as an actor, but I just don't believe him as a kid who'd get picked on, you
Okay.
know? Like at all. And not saying that people should get picked on, but it's like this dude, if
Give
he
me a
went to my
kid I
high
can
school,
really believe is going to get picked on.
yeah, yeah. But it's like if this guy went to my high school, this guy would be homecoming king. So I just like there's
It
just
was it
like
was a different time when there was film though.
true, true. Like and I get that. So he like I think that like he's good as Spider-Man. I like his suit. It's not as good in my opinion as Tobey Maguire's suit. Him and Gwen Stacy have like universes more chemistry than Kristen Dunst and Tobey Maguire ever had. I mean, Tobey Maguire really can't have chemistry with a freaking brick wall. It's I but this movie lands at six just because it is kind of that forgettable. Like I had to go back and be like, wait, who even is the villain? Oh, it's Dr. Connors. It's
I
the lizard.
I agree.
It's like
If I were to put this in forgettable range, it'd be between this one and Far From Home for me. So I
yeah.
definitely agree with that. And I do like this one. I like the suit. I like the edge. I like the style of this Sony film. He's to me like the most I actually love the look of this Spider-Man, like the whole thing. Like he's the most I feel like athletic Spider-Man, even though he's kind of tall and lanky, like adds like a really
Hmm.
cool dynamics, like the way he kind of interacts and fights. I liked it, but like you said, kind of forgettable, very forgettable villain. And so that one for me was 5. So you hit it at 6. I have it at 5.
Yeah, what's your six?
My 6. This is going to be a shock. People might not like this. Okay,
Don't do it.
is Spider-Man No Way Home. I know. I know.
Sam.
I know. So let me just like, I know this is so like contrary to popular opinion. So give me like 2 minutes to just spew this out and then you can rip me to pieces, okay?
Okay.
I was told to watch this movie for so long. When it came out, like And I will say, after the second Spider-Man film came out, everyone was like, that was okay with Tom Holland. I didn't hear too much about it. But when this movie came out, I heard so much about it. Everyone was like, you have to go see this Spider-Man. They're like, this Spider-Man is so much fun. And it's like, you know, the capping of a trilogy. And you get the multiverses universe and stuff. And so I waited like a year or two to watch this. And when I saw it, I was honestly... it was too much nostalgia for me. It was too much like CGI'd. Like everything was like, it almost felt like some of the new Star Wars films, like Force Awakens, but even worse in my opinion, was like the nostalgia was just being shoved down your throat. We were like, oh, there's Doc Ock. He's going to say his Doc Ock line. And there's Green Goblin. He's going to say his Green Goblin line. And here's every villain. And then all the Spider-Mans. And it's just... almost, it's so like caricaturized throughout the entire thing. Like you're getting the Spider-Man meme, like they're pointing at each other, they're kind of like doing their own thing, and it is like charming to an extent, but I also feel like they laid on so thick it's almost too much for me, and I think the movie actually like goes way past its running time, and it also turns into this whole like Night at the Museum progression where, these villains are out of here. We got to go catch this villain. Then we got to catch this villain and go catch this villain. And then, okay, we're going to all have just a big fight at the end because turns out the villains didn't change into good people. Shocker. These super villains didn't have a change of heart when they were reignited into villains. So I'm not saying I disliked it. I still liked the movie. I just wasn't as head over heels for it as everybody was. So it's my 6. It's still a thumbs up for me. I would still, if you're a Spider-Man fan, like I feel like it's a must watch because it has just every section of Spider-Man. It just brings it all together. So I think that's cool. But there's my 2 minutes on it. Go ahead.
Ugh. I have Spider-Man No Way Home as my number 1.
Whoa! Oh my gosh!
Which is potentially equally as shocking as having it at 6, because I don't know if that's necessarily the most popular opinion.
Wow.
I love this movie. I think this movie, like, for a lot of the reasons that you hated it, I think I loved it. I am a sucker for nostalgia, but I actually think that this movie is it's less of a nostalgia.
You are a sucker for nostalgia. I know you, and you love nostalgia more than anyone in films.
Yeah, I do. I do love it. I love a good callback, but I actually think of it way more as a retrospective, where this movie is looking back, and you have all these Spider-Mans, and they're all looking back again and being like, here are the things that I regret. Mm-hmm. And I think of like different ways that each Spider-Man is able to redeem themselves, right? Like Tom Holland has regret because he started this whole thing with like the multiverse anyway. He's like, he's barreling towards having to erase everyone's memory of him, like all the goodness that he did, all of that like heroism that he put into the world, his relationship with Mary Jane, that like that's where this is going. He's having to like deal with these consequences. For Andrew Garfield, he gets to have a redeeming moment where MJ is falling from the scaffolding and he goes down. It's almost shot for shot the same as it is in that super impactful moment in Spider-Man 2. And there's like, if you've seen that movie, you have this dread. You're like, oh my gosh, like, is this going to happen? And like some people are probably better.
That was my favorite part of the movie. I was like, oh yes. I was like, Zendaya's gonna die.
Yeah. And it's just the whole, but like for me, it's just, he's reaching down and you're like, oh my gosh, it's not going to happen. It's going to happen to him again. Is his history going to repeat itself? Which is the question that the movie's asking over and over and over again. He rescues her. And then just, you even see Tobey Maguire, and it's Tobey Maguire, and he's not this like weird punk kid who just like can't really act. He's
the mature one.
Yeah. He's introspective. He's like looking back on his life. He's looking at the regrets that he had with Mary Jane and just all these things, and he's trying to choose a different path, and he's like almost like reluctant to enter in.
Real quick, could you have even imagine if they had let Zendaya die there and you got the audience gasp again because you subverted expectations again, and then Andrew Garfield failed again? Wow, that would have been crazy. These
that would
movies
have been
don't
a
go as
totally
hardcore as the first
yeah.
two series, though, in my opinion.
True. I mean, you do have some of that like Marvel veneer over it,
Oh
right?
yeah,
To where it can only get so dark.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, like that like Mary Jane doesn't die, but Peter Parker dies to her
Mm,
because
very deep.
she forgets him,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
Like he gives up everything because like, the story of Spider-Man is in a nutshell, how can he hold on to his life as this kid in New York, and how can he also hold on to being a Spider-Man? And at the end of the day, he had to give up both. Why? Because he is Spider-Man. Because he
Or
does have to give it
or
up.
because he secretly doesn't like Zendaya. And he's like, this is my out. This is my relationship
He's gonna
out.
fake his own death, and he's gonna erase his memory just so he doesn't have to have that breakup phone call.
With Zendaya, if I were in the same position, I would do the exact same thing. Okay, we've got to move on from
Yeah.
the Zendaya hate and move this along real quick. Okay, so your fourth favorite film. What do you got at 4? Is that what we're on for you? 4?
I'm
Or are you on
on
5?
5.
Okay, what
Yeah.
do you got for 5?
5 is the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So for the record, I love everything above 5 for me. Like rewatching
This 5? Do you
Spider-Man, I think
love
it's.
5 and above?
I would say so. Like
Okay.
I just thoroughly enjoyed my rewatches. It was super duper fun. Um, Things that I didn't like about it is like the first time that like Peter Parker like shoots web out of his veins, and you just see like the stuff like builds up in his tendons, and is like bleh, and just like it shoots out. It's such like body horror, and it like grosses me out. It's like, oh yeah, I have to remember like Sam Raimi came from horror, and this is
Right.
kind of like his thing, so he's like really into grossing you out. And like the more I think about it, just like the biological implications of him being able to like produce webbing, just like
That is
as
so
a
weird.
grown adult, really grosses me out.
I have not heard anyone with a take like that, which is why I love talking to you. It's like
Yeah,
I've never heard anyone have that take or reaction to that part of Spider-Man, which is awesome.
yeah. And I do have a pretty visceral reaction against Tobey Maguire. Just like he's such a little creep in all these movies. He
He's your
tries
Zendaya.
weird.
He's your Zendaya. You
He
see him
might
on
be he
screen
might be my
and he's
mom's
just
Zendaya.
off-putting to you.
Just a guy who is down for like an upside down kiss and then goes to like relive it in the third movie is like, man, no, just no. It's not
Stop
like
on the
not
kiss.
about it.
That kiss won MTV Movie Awards Best Kiss. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let me hit you real quick as we keep going. That is my number 1 film. So,
Wow.
crazy. Isn't it funny where our differences are at and how they're flipped accordingly? Um,
Hmm.
Going back to that kiss, one of the most probably memorable kisses in all of Hollywood cinema. Like it's shown all the time. It's
For the wrong reason. 'Cause
but
it's ridiculous.
it's memorable and it's wet and it's intense.
It's like he would have drowned because of where she like put his mask and he's like suffocating while they're
He's a
trying to.
spider,
Yeah.
okay? He can't drown. He's got webs in him. Whatever. Um, I love that he beats up Flash, who, like you said, looks like he's 30 years old. Looks like
Oh
Flash.
yeah.
Flash looks like Rex from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, if anyone knows who
So
that is.
good.
And I think this movie had such an impact when it came out. I remember they reshot it. It was post 9/11. There's that epic end scene where he ends up on the flag, like post 9/11, and it was like a cultural, like Americana moment where people were like, "Oh my!" Like this, like shook a
Yeah.
lot of people. Um, it has Green Goblin in it, who's incredible.
Willem Dafoe's
Yeah,
so
Willem
good.
Dafoe is unbelievable.
So good.
I think one of the best scenes in this film is when Peter is bleeding from his arm and the
Yes.
blood is dripping, and you have Willem Dafoe like really on the edge, and his senses are heightened, and he's like something's up, and just some great tensiony moments. You get the best flashback scene that you mentioned earlier with Uncle Ben, like that death scene is so unbelievably impactful, and the follow up of it, and then even the ending of the film with Green Goblin, like, you know, he ends up like killing himself, like, you know, Peter is able to like dodge him and tricks him into that. Incredible death scene, incredible final words, right? Don't tell Harry, like, is a big deal. And then you have the funeral scene with the quote that launched all of, I would say, relaunched all of superhero films, and the entire Spider-Man character becomes based around this. With great power comes great responsibility. And at the end of that scene, it's just so epic, and everyone remembers that, like, walking, he kisses Mary Jane, the realization. I just think, like, it's the best singular Spider-Man film that comes full circle with no anticipation of what comes next. Like, there's so much anticipation, but also, like, that movie is, like, just so complete to me. So that's my number one. Let's, because we got to keep moving because we're stretching out a little bit. Let's move on. What is your 4?
My 4 is Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Me too.
Okay, I knew there was gonna be a point where we like aligned. Spider-Man: Homecoming.
We aligned on Spider-Man 3, and then down the line, we've gotten 4 movies later. We're at Homecoming, number 4.
Yeah. Okay. What'd you love about Homecoming? Tell me about what you thought about Homecoming.
It's our introduction to Tom Holland as Spider-Man, and I think he just kills it, and I think he's so charming, and I think Michael Keaton is like a very forgettable villain, but also like I like him as a villain at the same time.
Yeah,
like
I do.
I like Michael Keaton as an actor. Weirdly, like the race swap twist where like he is this girl's dad. That actually got me, and I loved it. And I was like, oh, that's totally possible. I was like, that's great. I love that. I didn't see that coming. Like, and I normally hate stuff like that, but I was like, actually, that was great. That was really well done.
Yeah. And then like the fact that he's like, you know, again trying to keep his 2 lives separate, and then they like meld right there, and he's like,
yes,
what am I supposed to do?
Crux of the film right there. Best point. Best shot of the whole film. The best reveal of the whole film right there. I think just overall it like the freshness, like the fresh look that it takes into the new Marvel look, and they really nail it. And I think that's my last point I'll make on this movie is I think with the next generation of Marvel films that came out between Iron Man and Thor and Hulk, all those movies, this one came a little later, and I feel like Marvel did this in these films is like so often like they put a lot of energy into the first film, and I feel like this one hits really well, and I think that's why I'm a little let down by the second film, and I think it happens for me for a lot of Marvel films with like Ant-Man 2s and Thor 2s, like and just some of these movies that feel like they drop off a little bit, and oftentimes Marvel realizes that and redeems them in a third film, or if they had a bad first film for whatever reason because they rushed it out to try and mix it into the canon, it feels like they redeem it later on, and this one I feel is the best of the trilogy like in its purest form. So that's all I'll say about that one.
Yeah. It's so good. I love the suit. Like the bright colors of the suit really just like warms my heart.
It's fun and poppy, right? It's kind of fun.
I love Peter and Ned's like whole relationship. I love it in actually all 3 of the movies. I think it's just like it's so funny. It's so cool. Like this is our first look at. I can't remember. I think Tom Holland may have been like 18 or something when he was filming this. It was like the first time we're seeing Spider-Man like not as a 30-year-old, and it's like, oh yeah, this guy's like weird and quirky, and like even their interactions, like him and Zendaya's interactions and Ned interactions, like oh my gosh, yes, this is like how. Okay, this movie came out I think in 2017, so I was a freshman in college. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, like, I feel what Spider-Man is feeling right now. I think it's the first time that I connected to, like, that's the first time that I connected to Spider-Man.
That's fair, yeah, that's fair.
And so, it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
Okay. So, 3 we already talked about for me, Amazing Spider-Man 2. And what did you have at 3 again?
I had Far From Home.
Far From Home, that's right. And then, so what's your number? So your number two movie has got to be Spider-Man 2?
It's so good.
It's Spider-Man 2, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Spider-Man 2 is so good.
That's
All of
also
the
mine. That's also mine. So we
I don't
also
know.
realign at number
Yeah.
2 is Spider-Man 2.
Yeah. All again, I just like love Aunt May in this whole trilogy. The Peter Aunt May stuff is so good. Like Aunt May handing Peter the like that $20 for his birthday, and him having to like keep secrets from her, and then just like her like weeping because her house is getting like foreclosed on, but she still wants to give her like surrogate son a gift for his birthday. And then just like Peter talking to Aunt May and just saying like Uncle Ben died that night for being the only person to do the right thing.
Dang.
It's so good. It's so impactful. Um,
I think.
Doc Ock
Oh, sorry. Go
absolutely
ahead.
cooks in this
He
movie
does.
too.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it
100%.
just Alfred Molina is just absolutely on fire the whole time. Just
Yep.
like the Shakes, like he's so Shakespearean. He like nails that
Yes.
so well.
Yeah. He's incredible. Yeah. I agree. I think I don't know for sure because I didn't look at the Rotten Tomatoes or the Metacritic or the what's the app you use again.
A
Um,
letterbox.
didn't look at it. If I had to guess, like some part of me would imagine that this would maybe be like a consensus number one across many lists. I think
Agreed.
it is an incredible sequel, like probably one of the best superhero sequels ever made.
Yeah.
I would probably put it at 2 in my head behind The Dark Knight, which is probably like the best superhero movie, like by consensus, probably ever made, which is like, that is insane company to be with.
Yeah.
I think
It does have the highest letterboxd average rating of 3.9.
There you go.
Out of all 8 movies.
you know, Kenny, that I nail my letterboxes. Okay, even though I don't watch, you know that I nail the scores. Or I don't use it, but I nail those scores. It is phenomenal. It has an amazing ending. I like seeing like it's one of the only films you see a villain transform twice, right? From good to corrupted, back to good at the end. For that final moment of life is just unbelievable. Yeah, we don't have to talk about this one too long, but like it's an amazing film. So 10 out of 10 would recommend go seeing this film, which makes it so sad, right? 1's amazing, 2's one of the best superhero films ever, maybe.
Yeah.
And then 3 is just a complete train wreck.
Yeah, there's like cognitive dissonance when you're watching, because I literally watched all 3 of these movies within like a day and a half. And like when I finished
You're like,
Spider-Man 3,
what?
literally I can't even fathom what happened. Like it does not make sense to me that they were on this track and they had basically the same creative team. Like the only person I can really blame is Sam Raimi's brother who helped write the script, and like maybe he just totally screwed things up. I mean, there's like 3 has some great things. Spider-Man 2 does have some hilariously funny moments.
Yes.
Right? Like the guy, like the pizza guy that Peter works for is super worried about being taken over by a company called Pizza Yurt, which I was just like, so funny. The good cop, bad cop routine that Harry's playing the whole time was like, oh, like Peter, you're my friend, but did you find Spider-Man? I'm gonna kill him.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
Harry's always just like turning. He's just like, but like, yeah.
Or like the end of the movie where Peter's like crawling across this like love web that he made.
Oh
to,
yes,
like,
that
kiss
is wonderful.
MJ.
That
It's
is
like,
wonderful. Why it just hits. I don't know why. But okay, so there's all of our Spider-Man films ranked. I would say if I were reviewing us right now, maybe we went on a little too much in the bottom middle, but I feel like there were some really good discussions that were had. We'll keep our bonus segment at the end here. We'll keep it really short. Don't have to give too much explanation. Let's say Spider-Man villain, real quick. Give me your best one. Give me your worst one.
Okay. Best Spider-Man villain for me is probably Doc Ock. I think Doc Ock is phenomenal in 2, but I also really, really love his line through No Way Home as well. And then my least favorite Spider-Man villain, oh, it's Electro, right? Like,
Yeah, forgettable
just
Electro.
yeah, just a guy who,
Oh, you
man,
had to
he
pick.
sucks.
You had to pick the black villain, Kenny.
I'm also like, except for Django Unchained, okay, I need to like, maybe that's not fair of me to Jamie Foxx, but uh, there's like a lot of movies I didn't really like him in. I
Jamie
guess he's
Foxx is
really
in
good
some
Baby
good stuff.
Driver,
I'm
but
gonna
he's
give you
lame.
some good Jamie Foxx movies because he's actually in some good stuff. I like Jamie Foxx. Okay, I respect that though. Doc Ock was 2 for me. Best villain for me is Green Goblin with Willem Dafoe. I just think it's incredibly. He's so iconic.
Yeah.
There's something he just nails
There's,
that villain so well. I think he's the most like evil of the villains, but also like
yeah.
tragically so. And
Yes.
so he nails it. Worst villain for me, I wrestled with Electro, but in today's climate, I didn't want to pick the only black villain, so I went with the other black villain, Venom from Spider-Man 3, Eddie Brock. Also from that '70s show. I
Yeah.
think basically all the scenes with Eddie Brock as Venom are so cringe, and the graphics
Yeah.
are so bad, and his death scene is so bad, and his motivations are so bad that
Yeah.
it's making my cheeks hurt, like just laughing like
Yeah.
about how bad his character is. So it's got to be Eddie Brock, Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
We gotta have a Spider-Man 3 as the
Michael,
worst villain because oh
yeah.
my gosh.
Michael Cera's rendition of Topher Grace in Molly's Game is also iconic.
Yes, yes, that is
Yeah.
very well said. Okay, so we're gonna recap really quick. Some of the episode podcast, the name, take 2. We talked about Timothy Chalamet. We talked about the shows we quit. We ranked all of our Spider-Man films, hit on our villains, and that was our first episode. And I hope people liked it. I hope the audio comes through, and I think we're gonna have 1 million listens on YouTube by tomorrow. So,
I
Kenny,
think so too.
it's been real. Let's sign off, and we will see about episode 2, and we're probably gonna be talking about some old school Pixar next week as we continue to get our feet wet. So,
I'm excited.
all right, thanks, Kenny. Bye.